To look at a topic that is still in our hearts and in our minds, and we must make assessment and sense of it, how electoral democracy can be strengthened. This is where we're going to actually be placing our Kickstarter. Now, Uganda having just completed yet another cycle of elections. This is from the presidential elections and parliamentary elections that we had on the 15th of January 2026, and that trickling down into the most recently concluded local government elections. The ballot has been cast, that's for sure. Leaders have been elected and they have been sworn into their offices, but complaints are also being still handled by the Electoral Commission at various tribunals. But beyond who won and who lost is the bigger democratic question that we are asking ourselves this morning. What can Uganda learn from this election cycle to make the next one more participatory, more trusted and more credible? So this morning we ask, how can electoral democracy in Uganda be strengthened? My panelists, those that have actually gone through the most recent cycle, these days they say ground. I'm being joined to my immediate left by Mr. Nelson Agaba, who is the National Youth League Coordinator for the Alliance for National Transformation. And with him, he's giving us perspectives of political parties, particularly young people, and of course opposition actors overall in how participation and credibility of the electoral process was from where they participated from. Good morning to you, Mr. Agaba.
Yes, good morning to you once again.
It's a pleasure to have you. Then next to him, we also do have a lady who said, this time round, I will tussle it out with my fellow contestants and may the best man or woman win. And she did come through as the LC5 woman Lord Councillor, and this is Miss Namazzi Olive, who is sitting with us here from the National Unity Platform and now is also a servant in the KCCA, bringing perspective firsthand from local government and grassroots level democracy. Good morning to you and you're most welcome.
Good morning, Priscilla. Good morning, viewers, Nakawa West, Kampala at large, and Uganda.
And later on, we're going to also be joined by a person from the Uganda Human Rights Commission, a commission bringing the perspective and questions around participation, election, violence and accountability in all in one perspective. They will be joining us shortly. But as we pick up the mantle of the day, we want to look at the democratic scorecard and how it's being perceived from the stakeholders that are seated on this table with me. I am Priscilla Regina Nalwoga. Welcome to our Kickstarter. Now, after the presidential, parliamentary and local government elections, what is happening in terms of assessment of the state of our electoral democracy in our country? As we are seeing democratic institutions becoming stronger, or are we seeing also, lots of strengthening in public confidence in some of these elections that we have underwent? Most recently is the LC1 and the LC2. So we want to understand what is the scorecard as far as electoral democracy is concerned, based on the recently concluded layers of elections. I will start with Ms. Namazzi.
Thank you very much, Priscilla. Actually, I sit here, first of all, as the LC5 Woman Councillor for Nakawa West, and then also the Deputy Speaker of Kampala Capital City Authority. And I also sit here as a member of the National Unity Platform. And largely, I sit here as a person who has firsthand felt what happened in the last elections. And for your information, Priscilla, I have been in this electoral cycle since 2016. That's when I started my political journey. But I must say that the recently concluded elections of 2026 have been, I think, the worst in history. It was very terrible. So it's not enough for us to just do the analysis, but it is also important for us to, first of all, ascertain the root cause of this chaos, the root cause of why, the aftermath of the election. So why is everything going on like this? It is because we have had state-sponsored chaos in these elections, and it has been very unfortunate. Because when you look at the kind of militarization that has happened in the previous elections, you can even wonder. I just want to start from the Kawempe North by-election, where we had the Honorable Elias Naukola. I think you realized what was there. We had military, we had JAT, we had LDU. all the security forces were in that election. And Ugandans at large are not chaotic people. They are people who love democracy, and they are people who are calm. But when the state comes in to act like that, to bring all the security forces together and brutalize people of Uganda, I think that is very terrible. And not just brutalizing them, but you find that foot soldiers are arrested, people's limbs are broken, political leaders. Now you can take, for example, you can look at the presidential elections. Our president, Robert Chagulanyi Sentamu, barricades were all over the place. When he's trying to get to a certain place, he's barricaded and he can't go through. And at the end of that day, the other candidates, like the NRM presidential candidate, was left to campaign freely. So you think, what kind of environment, what kind of atmosphere is created? Mm-hmm. And apart from that, and I want to also add on, the way that the Electoral Commission in Uganda is appointed, I think is the first defeat of democracy in this electoral process. When you look at countries like Kenya, in Kenya, they go through a public process. There's a selection committee, the commissioners are selected, and they are publicly selected. Then they are sent to the president, which president selects from those people that have been sent to him from that public committee, selects the chairperson and the commissioners. Then they are taken to parliament for vetting. They are either taken back or they are approved. But in our case, it is only the fountain of honor that elects these people, that appoints these people and takes them to parliament, where I have never seen any commissioner or any chairperson being rejected in parliament. So that is quite unfortunate. For you, I want to give you a scenario. If you went for a football match with another media house, and the referee comes from one of the media houses that you are going to be competing with, will you be comfortable with in that match? Would you be comfortable, Priscilla?
I'd be expecting them to actually be impartial.
No. That is not the case, because he who pays the piper determines the tune. You expect, so that is what our Electoral Commission does, and we have followed it, because how do you expect people to get pre-ticked ballots? I saw it firsthand in my election. There were pre-ticked ballots, and I was a witness. But even the case, even in court, we can't go there and get justice. The case disappeared along the way. And I wondered what happened.
When you say disappeared, is it that they have delayed the case hearing up to now?
No. In 2021, there was at one polling station where I was being voted, there were two booklets of pre-ticked ballots. So chaos erupted at the polling station, and I was called as a candidate. So when I reached there, the police was there, military was there, and everything had been there. The crowd was there, and people were also protesting why such a thing happened. So people were arrested who were involved in that act, and we went to the police. So I went to police and told them I want to be a witness on this case because I was there. I saw firsthand. So they told me, okay, you write your statement. So I wrote the statement. The person was taken to prison. But after like 2 days, I tried to follow up, and I could not trace the case. Even the person that was, the polling agent that was involved, imagine, an officer of the Electoral Commission is the one who was pre-ticking those ballots and was waiting to pour them in the ballot box, which is very unfortunate. So even up to now, I don't know where that case disappeared from. I tried to follow it up from police, it is in court. From court, it is still at police. So at the end of that day, it is very frustrating. And I don't think it is right for us to say that why are elections chaotic? I think our question should be, why does the state make elections chaotic?
Okay, all right. Well, we do have Mr. Agaba here, who's also is a counsel, and then at the same time was an agent to one of the presidential candidates in the recently concluded elections. I believe he would have a better perspective and opening to some of the facts that you have alluded to and the experiences that were through their party.
Yeah, today is basically a topic about the electoral democracy. And as she mentioned, she really pointed out very key serious areas. What is electoral democracy in the first place? This is a system where people have a right to vote and choose for their leaders, and that when they vote, their vote counts. And the one that they have voted is accountable to those that have voted him after he has won into, into power. Now, the other aspect of, okay, what should be done? You cannot talk of electoral democracy, for example, where you don't have, you don't allow competition, political pluralism. We are in a multi-party dispensation. That is, as she mentioned, you cannot have ad hominem application of law, that you will just target an individual or a particular party when the other individual or candidate is free to campaign, to do particular aspects. So you need to allow that fair competition. That's one aspect. Then the independence of the judge, of the referee, that is the Electoral Commission. Who is controlling it? Is it independent? Is it, has it shown, has it proved that it can be impartial? It is credible. It can be trusted. So where there is no trust in the referee, then the players will not be satisfied in the first place. So you're starting with bias. So, and where there is no trust in systems that should facilitate the electoral democracy, then we have failed from the start. The other aspect is the aspect of, for example, freedom of speech, free media. So because media is a watchdog, it watches everybody and it reports. So where there is free, suppression of media, suppression of freedom of expression, association, then you are undermining the aspects of electoral democracy. The other aspect, you're looking at aspects of integrity. Integrity in terms of how transparent are the people that are facilitating this process. When you're looking at the state, that is the state apparatus of police, military. So where there is lack of transparency on how they do, they will say one thing in front of the cameras, but also go ahead and do a different thing. So that lack of integrity, of being trusted. So now when you get back and you find, she talked of the cases that, okay, you are dissatisfied, you are disenfranchised, you are not treated well, and now you are saying, I need to access justice. You're denied justice. So you cannot talk of electoral democracy where rule of law, justice, and accountability lack. The other aspect is civic education. You cannot talk of electoral democracy where people are just sensitized on how to vote a month to the voting day, not on why to vote. Those are two different things and produce two different outcomes, on how to vote and also on why to vote. So if these two are done in, it is like a continuous program across spectrum. Government, human rights commission is mandated to do civic education, but they will cry that there is no will to, from government for it to do its work by undermining the, finances and whatever. The other aspect is the universal suffrage and participation. Are citizens participating? Ask yourself why, for example, people are participating highly at presidential level and at local council, which is really, really, really the heart of government. because central government at the presidential level, that is the head, where they make policies and then they're implemented at local level. So when people do not mind, do not seem to understand, and that goes back on the why voting. Because if a 30-year-old person, farmer, in Kamwenge, in Arua, in Kabale, they know that voting an LC3 chairperson is the only reason they will get drugs in the hospital, in the health center 4, in their health center 3 and health center 2. They will not only vote, but they will also guard their vote. They will sacrifice to vote. If a farmer knows that if I vote a chairman LC5, then the feeder road that connects me and my produce, agricultural produce, to the market will be done. We have seen what is happening. So all that goes in, under the aspect of civic education and, political freedoms, to ensure that we have credible elections, people participate, they allow fair competition, to allow other parties participate without really applying laws, regulations ad hominem by targeting individuals and letting the other party at play.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Agaba and Ms. Namazzi, for giving us your opening remarks to your analysis of the scorecard of the recently concluded general elections, right from January up to August. And we're really asking ourselves a poignant question this morning: how electoral democracy can be strengthened in our country, looking to a better future that has free and fair elections. And where does that start from? Where does that free and fairness start from? There are entities and institutions that are supposed to be watchdogs over that free and fairness, especially when it comes to human rights observation. And that's the Uganda Human Rights Commission. One of its representatives is going to be joining us on this table and giving us their perspectives. Do stay with us. To the polls, you voted and you decided who your next leader was. However, we believe, and of course from evidence, this data and statistics that we have, it was not a smooth ride, neither was it free and fair for where some people are seated. So speaking of seating, I am joined by a panel of discussants as we get to look at electoral democracy in our country and how best it can be strengthened given the experiences that are being shared on this table. We did have Namazzi Olive, who is the LC5 woman councillor, sharing her experience with us, and she talked about brutality, she talked about segregation of party and color, and of course the voting irregularities that she experienced as a participant, but also really the overview of the environment and the mood that was as she underwent that election cycle at that level of governance. We also did have the voice of Mr. Nelson Agaba from ANT, who also dabbled as the agent for the presidential candidate in the recently concluded elections, and he talked about the target on the opposition actors, so limited political freedoms, the unfair playground to the other actors that were part of the election. He also made address to the freedoms of speech that were infringed on, the suppression of media, and of course he also did make mention of the rule of law, justice and accountability that were weakened. Civic education and participation of the voter were also elements that he pointed out as he saw deteriorating over the course of the electoral cycle. Now joining us is Ms. Sarah Birungi, who's a Human Rights Officer, Directorate of Monitoring and Inspections. This is with the Uganda Human Rights Commission. She's bringing with us the human rights and institutional perspective to questions around election, around participation and around accountability. You're most welcome, Ms. Birungi.
Thank you.
All right. So you found us really setting the scene and looking into the scorecard, which I've briefly shared what our other discussants had put on table. And I want to find out from you, what is the Uganda Human Rights Commission assessment of the elections as we've been going through the different levels of elective democracy in Uganda?
Thank you very much, and good morning, dear viewers. Like Olive said, Priscilla said, I'm from the Uganda Human Rights Commission, and as a commission, we have a mandate to monitor the entire electoral process, that is pre, then during and after elections. So we ably did that as a commission. We carried out civic education where we were able to, and then we were able also to monitor the elections. And that is both before the elections, but also election observation. We are accredited as an institution to observe elections. So we did observe the presidential and parliamentary elections and the subsequent elections, including the just concluded local government elections. And what I can say is that there was a significant drop in voter turnout, especially for the local government elections. You could notice that there was fatigue among the population, so the voter turnout was low. But also, I would like to say that maybe the media coverage is also, it tends to focus more on the presidential and the parliamentary elections. And then for the local government, it's not all that, but I can say the voter turnout was very low. And we noted that we were able to monitor in different parts of the country, and that was our what we noticed.
In your assessment of low voter turnout, what did you realize or survey were the contributing factors to why people were choosing to stay away from this democracy process?
Okay, yeah, first of all, I think because of the staggered, you know, kind of, the polling dates were so staggered, and so, you know, people are going to the polls, and then the next week you hear, because the polls started in January, and then February we had those division level councillor, LC5 and plus, and so somehow people had already like moved on, especially those who felt that maybe their choice of candidate, for instance, at the parliamentary and presidential level, are not the people maybe they had voted. Some people felt like they were not, they did not get fairness. So there are many contributing factors. So that could also explain. But also, I know there was a public holiday which we took note of, and that was a very good move from the side of government. But it also came at a point where, like, people were already, you know, fatigued with the entire electoral process and with all the conflicts that, you know, were going on, the petitions. Somehow there was fatigue from the citizenry. Yep.
Okay, all right. And because you come from the Uganda Human Rights Commission, what was the state of human rights observance throughout this electoral cycle?
I must note that we noticed that there was, because for us as the Human Rights Commission, we look out for, you know, human rights issues. We are talking about issues of equality, we are talking about non-discrimination, and so for us, we are looking out to see whether, for instance, persons with disabilities are able to come out and, you know, exercise their right to vote. We are looking at the pregnant women. Are they given some kind of, you know, treatment that they are able to go and cast their vote? We are looking at older persons. Do they have somebody to come and support them or somebody to guide them on where to go? Yeah, things of that nature. So as a commission, those are the kinds of issues we are trying to look out for, but also to ensure that there is voter secrecy, what is the distance from, you know, the basin and all that stuff. So we are trying to look at the human rights aspect of the election.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. As we turn to the voter turnout and what could have been the underlying factors that led to some people going faithfully to check that they are in the National Register, but also faithfully choosing to stay away from the actual exercise. Presidential election, I think, gives us the most important starting point. Official figures showing that 11,366,201 people voted in the January presidential election, and this was giving us a representation of 52.5% of the registered voters, with President Museveni garnering 71.6% of the vote, Robert Chagulanyi 24.7%, Nathan Nandela Mafabi 1.8%, while ANT's Mugisha Muntu received 0.53%. But this means that almost half of those that registered did not turn out to vote. Mr. Agaba, starting with you, from a political party perspective, why did so many Ugandans willingly register but then stay away from the ballot?
Yeah, many contributing factors. And one of them I mentioned in the beginning is about, will my vote count? Yes, I'm going to vote. Will my vote count? Then, if it counts, I will show up and defend the vote. So where people read the environment to say that even if I vote, my vote will not count. Two, or I will reach, they would have voted for me. Because voting, people need, some people vote before reaching the polling station. So when I reach at the polling station and now I am voted for, what will be the motivation? Or that one who hasn't come, who is on his way to the voting area, will they turn up to vote? So that is the other aspect. But there is also the structural barrier of, and that is because of lack of civic education. People don't know why they vote. That's why you have had people vote for 2,000, bar of soap, matchbox, here in town and in the villages. And you ask yourself, are these the logical reasons why we have regular and free and fair elections organized at intervals? And the experience, I was an official agent of my presidential candidate in the 2026 elections. The experience is that people have lost hope. So they just say, look, now what can I take? What is my take now as I'm going to vote for you? Because people don't deliver. So if leaders, if we have deliberately created the system that you will vote for me, I will bribe you, vote for me, I will go, swindle, take my money, come back and then buy you. So people lose that aspect of trust. So where there is no trust, then the other aspect is lack of mobilization by the key players. Because
and who are some of the key players you're referring to here?
These are political parties, these are candidates, then like Uganda Human Rights Commission that has actually a structural mandate to do civic education. The Human Rights the Electoral Commission. So when there is no timely, grounded mobilization of the voters to come and vote, then people will not turn up. Because again, people think, and that has to be structural in nature. People who vote are not people who come to rallies. When you count how many people come to rallies, are not even a quarter of the people that are supposed to vote. Because if, let's assume a stadium is 20,000 people. If every candidate, by way of calculation, everyone watching can do that, 20,000 people, you have a huge rally of 20,000 people, times 146 districts that we go to. That means you have only met 2,920,000 people. So out of the 23 registered voters, you have actually directly interacted with these. And these people cut cross in other rallies. So even if we said you are meeting 30,000 people, so if you're meeting 30,000 people, basically, because you're not even meeting 5 million voters. So who should mobilize a voter to the polling station? And you can do, research. There is a research that was done on the continent. Low voter turnout is across the continent. Actually, the best country that has ever registered a high voter turnout is Ghana. Why? Because political parties in Ghana are real functional. they do some great work
Okay.
at the ground. So you need to have players like political parties that have structures. So through those structures, that's when voters are mobilized. That's how voters are identified. That's how voters are encouraged.
All right, so
but the other most important is the aspect of militarization because of fear. Somebody, you are talking of human rights issues, a child, a pregnant woman, you know, students. They will not risk their life where they know they are going to get to the ballot and there is going to be tear gas. There is going to be brutalization. There is going to be, you know, if about the media that perhaps would encourage.
Okay, let me turn to Ms. Namazzi.
And all is down, so that's
Ms.
very
Birungi does make assessment
for
of
me.
the important role or the key aspect of civic education and how important it is to contribute to how many people turn out on the D-Day to make their voices heard through the ballot. Let me turn to you, Ms. Namazzi, and starting with the civic education element. Starting with you as a candidate, by the way, because even if you're not aware of the civic education, then how are you able to support others to actually turn out from the rally to the ballot? So what was your assessment of engagement of the different stakeholders and really people's informed point of view when it comes to their rights in democracy?
Yes.
Their rights and duties
Yes,
to democracy.
Thank you very much. But allow me, first of all, to start from this point. I'm surprised that my sister from the Human Rights Commission has not talked about the gross human rights violations that happened in the just recently concluded election. For example, the fact that even after elections, one of the candidates was his house was broken into, his family was terrorized, and he's even in exile. I think that was a matter to talk about. I'm also surprised that the Human Rights Commission has not even talked about the political prisoners, the people that are in prison just because they went to attend a rally. Not talked about the people that were killed, for example, in Ginger because they had gone to attend a rally. So those are the things that really, for me, I expect the Human Rights Commission to also bring out, because for us as the leaders, for us as the population, because we speak for the people, those issues matter a lot. The issues of somebody not having a right to freely express who they support, somebody not having a right to freely go and support their candidate, because when you go there, I was the first, I must say that this was really well orchestrated. The low voter turnout was well orchestrated from the beginning, because on the first presidential rally, which was in Kawempe, I think it was in Kawempe South.
That's for NUP candidate.
Yes, for the NUP candidate, Robert Chagulanyi Center. I was personally there, but I must say that it was a war zone. It was a terror zone. There was tear gas, there were dogs. In fact, the military dogs, for me where I was, it was just in a second, the military was just going to leave the dog to come and bite us. So it was really terrible. And we were just there to attend the rally, to listen to the manifesto of our candidate. So it was terrible. And every time you would see the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, when you finish to vote, do not stay at the polling station. Leave the polling station. People were like, if I go there, I may be brutalized. If I go there, I may lose my life. Why am I even wasting my time? Even when I vote, they will declare other results. Because even up to today, for us, I want to also categorically speak here, Priscilla, that the results that were declared by the Electoral Commission for us as the National Unity Platform, we do not agree with them. So I will leave that for another day, but categorically, we do not agree with them, because even up to now, we are still requesting.
You did not agree with them, but neither was a petition presented by your party to, to lodge this disagreement.
We decided not to present a petition because we do not expect to get justice, because the people that we are going to seek justice from are the ones that probably declared. We don't expect to get justice from there. So I want to say that the civic education, the Electoral Commission is one that was given over R1 trillion to handle whatever it was handling. And it was so disappointing that the polling agents that were there, the polling officials that were there, some of them, they were trained, I think, in the last 2 or 3 days, because we saw people in Chambogo University and people are like, they have brought people who are going to rig elections, and we're like, but what are those people doing there? Even I remember, I think the leader of opposition, our MP for Nakao, West Rembojo Senyonyi, even had to go and storm that place and find out what is really happening there. So that was like 2 days to the election. I told us there are polling agents who are being trained to use the biometric machines. Which biometric machines we even never used in the presidential election. And surprisingly, immediately after the presidential elections, I've never had anywhere that the biometric machines have not worked. All of them surprisingly worked, which was very funny for us because we thought that we had invested a lot of money and we thought that we were really going to get the actual results because when you look, they are a bit good. So the civic education, even the people who were there on the polling officials, they also didn't know what to do. I was surprised that when we were filling in the declaration forms, most of them, you get there, your declaration form says something else, even there says something else. And you are wondering, a person who has been trained. And yet it's your copies that you have presented a person who has been trained. EC officials. How do you allow to change results? A person who has been trained. And when it comes to the public, the job was basically left to us the candidates. We are the ones who are electing, who were training the voters. We were putting up posters that you have to, the ballot is here, you will tick here, you put your thumbprint here. If you are going to vote, voting is going to start. It was basically left to us, the candidates, to do so. I am waiting for the Auditor General's, for the Attorney General's report
to give us their assessment of the impact of low civic education and what really contributed to this being an issue, a continuous issue that's being spoken of on this table.
Thank you very much. Allow me to say that yes, like Mr. Agaba had talked about earlier off air, that we oftentimes use the issue of civic education, of lack of funding. But I must say that we did carry out civic education, and we have a number of forums that we use. First of all, our main being radio, because we know most of our rural folk listen to radios. And what we did different this time around is that we had to do joint engagements together with the Electoral Commission, noticing that for them they had a bit of maybe more funding than we did. So most of the regions across the country, we did team up, and so we did joint engagements, doing civic education at the same time doing voter education. And it seems a bit contradictory when Agaba says the reason why the people didn't turn up maybe is because of lack of civic education, and yet he later talked of other issues, that led to, low voter turnout. And so, much as we did what we could doing the civic education, of course we have to ensure that we do it in the local languages that people understand. And we have 12 regional offices across the country plus 11 field offices. So we ensure that all those officers reach out to the different media houses in those areas and reach out to the people. However, we feel that maybe going forward, if we can get more funding, and that goes to both the Electoral Commission and Uganda Human Rights Commission, that this funding should not just come at the tail end of the electoral cycle, but rather it should be something that, there is sufficient funding throughout the electoral cycle. Like by now,
starts with day one of the roadmap.
Yes, so that it is continuous, so that it doesn't just come at at the end of the.
So on that note, if you could recommend, I know that increase in funding is a recommendation that's very important for you as an institution. What other reform would you recommend as an institution should be adopted between now and the next electoral roadmap cycle?
Okay, we did monitor and we wrote a report. We are mandated to write an election report, which we handed over to Electoral Commission plus Parliament. And so among the recommendations that we gave was that, of course, funding being the most outstanding, but also we need to have more engagements, more kind of stakeholder engagements to have. But we also noticed that the parties themselves, like Olive said, the mobilization, I don't know whether it was said by Olive or Agaba, that some of the parties are not prepared even at the grassroots level. as we were monitoring, we noticed that most of the parties actually didn't have agents, apart from the urban areas. So the parties also have a role to play, but also civil society, of course, which also helps with civic education. It's not only limited to the Uganda Human Rights Commission, but we know civil society is doing a lot. And so we encourage every stakeholder to do more. We would like to commend the Electoral Commission in that this time round there was more engagement. At least from our perspective, we could see that they did more engagements as opposed to the past elections. Engaging with stakeholders, the political parties, the media. I remember one time the Electoral Commission chair himself was on TV, like trying to, you know, elaborate and show how the voting, how the process is going to be carried out at the polling station. So I think they also came out more, but the low voter turnout has a lot more. It's a mix of issues. It can't be entirely blamed on lack of voter education.
We have 4 years to address some of those issues so that the next cycle can be fairer to all. One recommendation from both of you briefly as we come to the end of this discussion. I'll start with you, Ms. Namazzi.
I think the first, for starters, I want to say that we need to have a truly independent electoral commission, which should be for the people and by the people. And in that, I think that people should apply. An application should be sent out publicly. People should apply, be vetted by the Judicial Service Commission, and then probably brought to Parliament for vetting, and then they can start their work, because then they will be accounting to the representatives of the people. So they will be for the people.
All right. And
demilitarization of the elections.
Yeah, my core recommendations are basically two, segmented into one, structural barriers, which I talked of, civic education. We need really not only to, you know, make people know how to vote, but why to vote. It will bring a different result that we'll be seeing. The other one is on the organization aspect. Political parties, mobilization should be a continuous activity to mobilize people to participate, not reactive as we have been seeing. And on that aspect is that we need at least to have database of the voters early in time. You know, I mean on time, so that people are able to know to engage with the voters. Also voters to know that, you know, all that is done. So for me, those are two aspects that I think, notwithstanding the other challenges, we can still make a win and a better show in 2031.
All right, Mr. Nelson Agaba, thank you so much for sitting with us on this table, looking at national party politics, and for local government. Thank you so much, Ms. Namazzi Olive, for sitting with us. And of course, we do have the Uganda Human Rights Commission that has given us their 2 cents and contribution to this discussion. Ms. Sarah Birungi, thank you so much for being with us. At the end of the day, elections may be done and dusted, but the democratic conversation must actually continue on and on. The real test is whether Uganda can actually use the lessons that have been shared on this table and recommendations to build a stronger participation and a stronger institutional trust and public trust in the vote come 2031. Thank you so much for being part of our Kickstarter. We do have a tech note coming up shortly. Do stay with us.